I was working at what was known as Centre Care, which is now Catholic Care, and I was also doing some part-time work with Colony 47 with their HIPPO program, working with young people. One of my colleagues, Chris Taylor, who's quite a charismatic caseworker, he'd been involved with Shelter in the UK and also was involved with Shelter here in Tasmania, so he dragged me along to meetings.
Well, I first got involved with Shelter because I was working in a housing organisation. I'd finished a degree and I was there helping people on low incomes to access bond and payments, and I hadn't really heard about Shelter, and Jed Donoghue asked me if I'd like to come along to some meetings. And so that sort of opened up a different world for me because I didn't really understand about systemic advocacy. So it's really different working and helping one person at a time, but then when you can actually join an organisation that's trying to help 1,000 Tasmanians, for instance, it's really quite a powerful organisation to join.
My interest in housing was because when I became homeless, I guess, and homelessness does affect everybody at some point or another. And so when I was settled and got myself organised again, there was an opportunity to do something about it. So when I heard that there was emergency housing, which was set up by a couple of people in the 70s, I went to see how they were going, and then from that became Shelter, and that was a group of volunteers that were really getting together to try and help homelessness in well, it was in Tasmania, but we were in North Hobart basically.
I've been involved with Shelter now for probably close on 15 years. So I was introduced to Shelter originally as a proxy for my previous CEO. And I think seeing the collective impact from all of those services sitting around that table has kept me engaged for this length of time.
Shelter Tas, I started with them in about 2006 on the policy committee. I was working at Anglicare at the time and kind of joined, I guess, wanting to kind of find out a bit more about what happens at a national level and kind of get involved in some strategic kind of work. So I was part of Shelter Tas policy committee and their exec until about 2019 when I left to go to Homes Tasmania, where I currently am. And I'm very humbled to have been made their inaugural life member at Shelter Tas, so I'm pretty chuffed about that, and I tell people wherever I go.
I think it's very important, it's very significant because it plays a coordination role, it disseminates information, it provides training for the sector, and based on the sector's needs, it's very responsive to what the sector needs and to what NGOs need, but it still has a focus on client and tenant outcomes. So it coordinates the homeless sector and also the community housing sector, which I think is very important, and it also provides a voice, a united voice to government. If we just work on single issues which reflect one person's concern, you don't capture the social issue. You're just looking at individual problems. So I think it's Shelter, and especially the CEO, has a lot of experience and a positive voice to government.
I was at Anglicare in the housing and homelessness sector for 25 years, and throughout that time Shelter was a really significant peak body for us. It was really good at kind of galvanising the sector, providing information from both a national level but also bringing together, I guess, issues for the state and the services working in the state, and creating kind of platforms so they could be listened to, so they could be advocated for, whether that was, more housing, more services, different services. So, really significant. I know they are thought of really highly in the sector still, and certainly from a government point of view, we work really closely with Shelter Tas, which I think is a really good thing.
I think Shelter Tas is vital to my organisation and the sector as a whole. Shelter has that combined voice, that leadership that it shows the sector, the engagement from all of our services and peers, and people with lived experience across the board. So I think, as I said, it's vital to the sector and to my role.
We lived on the smell of an oily rag. We didn't have much money to start with. Eventually we got some funding from the federal government. State Shelter here got funding for some of it, and then when the government changed it, it went, and then we got a bit from federal, and then that went, and then National Shelter had funding for quite some time, and then I think it was in Howard's time that it was all taken away. So we all sort of tried to keep going in some way or another by little bits of cash from here, there and everywhere to make sure that somebody got paid.
Shelter have always punched above their weight. They've always done so much with so little, in my mind. They've certainly got more resources over the last few years, which I think is a good thing. I think when I started with them, it was Patty as the exec officer with a little bit of part-time admin support, and she always did a lot, even back then, just in terms of supporting the sector, you know, providing input at a national level into a variety of other peak bodies, responding to you know, discussion papers that were put out and reforms that were going on. So they've always kind of punched above their weight.
We used to just meet in a back room of like a butcher's place actually, and we decided, which is really big for Tasmania, to meet in the centre of the state, because that was the only way we could get really people from the north, the northwest and the south to come along. And that was a really successful model, because that way we had the reach, we had the regional diversity. Something's different happening in Birding compared to it is in Huonville, and we had that ability to bring all that knowledge and expertise from sort of regional Tasmania and urban Tasmania all in the one spot together.
Well, I think it's grown. I mean, it's become more professional. There's more people involved. I think Tasmania is a small state, it's a small sector, so it's important that we all work together. So over the years, Shelter Tas has auspiced community housing programs and tenant programs. He's worked with the co-ops as well. So I think that the view within Shelter is to try to get everybody in the tent, working together.
I think that our whole sector is like family. You know, we come from all different organisations, we come from all different, you know, denominations of services, but it's and that's the responsibility that is from Shelter. You know, everyone that sits around that table has been engaged with Shelter for decades. We work together closely, we engage together closely, we have input into policies, we have input into funding models. So, you know, that's one of those things that keeps me engaged. There's been lots of change in our sector, you know, driven by Shelter Tas. You know, I think without Shelter Tas, that change wouldn't have occurred. You know, we look at where housing and homelessness services were back when I joined the committee to now, and Shelter's been responsible for driving that change and driving the sector towards that change.
A great achievement that Shelter achieved in 2019 was getting rid of the public housing debt. That was $157 million that took away half of our funding. So that was a group effort once again, but it was consistent advocacy by Shelter. So we also lead asking for strategies. We've got the 10,000 homes, it's the current government's policy. We're looking at 10% of social housing. All of those things came directly from Shelter through our thinking, our strategic planning, and I'm really proud of all the things that we've achieved.
We had a $150 million debt. So we would get funding every year from the Australian government, and then a lot of that money would actually go back to them in repayments. So it kind of meant we had very little or a lot less than we would have liked to spend on services. So Shelter Tas tirelessly advocated, as long as I could kind of remember, to have that debt waived. They spoke about it everywhere. They put it in, a lot of submissions and those kinds of things, including talking to Senator Jackie Lambie about it at the time. And Senator Lambie is certainly very much credited with having Tasmania's housing debt waived, and we're all very, very grateful for that. But I really see that as a Shelter Tas achievement.
Sometimes the government will fund a program or try a pilot to see how it goes. I think getting funding, the second round of funding or the second service agreement in 1997 was very significant because it meant that Shelter had actually consolidated membership, the views of the sector, was seen as or seen and heard as a respected voice.
We're seeing people with problems all the time. We see that the system isn't, we haven't got enough housing. So imagine when people come to your service and you've got to turn them away. That's really difficult you're in a domestic violence service and day in day you're actually experiencing the trauma that those people have gone through or going through. And we're all human, and so that can be quite difficult. So we've really ensured that our training is very focused on the wellbeing of the workforce. And a lot of that is about having a trauma-informed approach. And there's a lot of work around vicarious trauma, but also we've sort of twisted that a bit and asked the trainers to really focus on that vicarious strength that we learn, because we all go through different experiences in our lives. Some of those are really difficult, some of those are really good. But the lesson is to come through the difficult times, because the good times will be there as well.
What's important is that the people who are falling out of the private rental market due to the lack of affordable accommodation, they need social housing. They may need in support to maintain that housing. That's social housing, or that which involves public and community housing. So Shelter, I think we're advocating for a 10% for an increase in the social housing stock and provision, but also we have to advocate for the support to keep people in properties, to prevent people becoming homeless through either economic issues or social issues.
I think we need to look more at how we grow housing and homelessness services, but how we look at that from an early intervention mindset, especially with our young people. Our young people aren't moving towards independence without secure housing, without, affordable housing. And I think Shelter's got a big role to play in that, with continued sector advocacy, continued engagement in those various government forums, sector forums, and just being the voice of our sector and the people we support.
Housing is specific, and it has specific needs and specific problems. And Shelter has been playing the role of being the advocate for new ideas, dealing with old ideas and moving them along, and also just helping where they can. And I don't think it would ever go away, actually, because they care about people, and it is about people.
I think it's really important to celebrate Shelter's 50th birthday and where we've come from and what we've achieved, and all the people that have been part of that.
I'd like to say congratulations to Shelter for the 50 years and the significant change I've seen in my 2.5 decades in the sector, and I look forward to seeing what the next 50 can bring.
It's been a real privilege being part of Shelter Tasmania, even though I'm kind of not part of it so much anymore. I have developed some fantastic lifelong relationships out of my association with Shelter Tasmania, not least of which with Paddy, which has been wonderful, and certainly would like to wish them all the very best on their 50th anniversary.
Shelter's an amazing place to work. That's why I've worked there so long. And one of the reasons is that a great collegiality, if that's the right word, with all our members. So that's the housing, homelessness services right across the state, ranging from crisis services for youth through to long-term housing. And what it is Shelter brings all of those people together, and Shelter is all of those people and all of those services. So that's a great achievement in itself. And that's what's really been the strength that's driven us. Circumstances change around us, different ministers come and go, different governments come and go, different policies come, but that core principle of the ethical base stays with Shelter and has stayed with Shelter all those years.